Hello friends, we were talking about the hypertension, and in the previous class we talked about two types of hypertension, primary and secondary. And in that video lecture we talked that primary hypertension does not have any specific cause, while secondary hypertension must be having some secondary reason that is ultimately causing the hypertension. In today's lecture we will be talking about the pathophysiology of primary hypertension. In the previous video I talked about that lots of factors may affect the pathophysiology of hypertension, and more prominently I talked about the overactivation of RAAS system and overactivation of sympathetic nervous system. In today's video I'll be more specifically talking about the overactivation of renin angiotensin aldosteron system. Okay, so let's start our lecture from a very important structure. Here you can see granular juxtaglomerular cells. These cells are very specific and they are present on the afferent arterioles and efferent arterioles in the nephron. And these cells, granular juxtaglomerular cells, they will release a very important protein, a very important hormone called as renin. Okay, what is the function of renin? We'll talk about it right after 1 minute. Now let's talk about another important protein, angiotensinogen, that is being released from the hepatocytes liver cells. Okay, now renin is basically responsible for conversion of angiotensinogen, that is approximately 14 amino acid protein. 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 8 9 10 11 12 13 14. These are basically amino acids, so it is basically made up of 14 amino acids. Now renin will convert angiotensinogen into angiotensin 1 just by removing these 4 amino acids that are present at the end. Just by removing the 4 terminal amino acid, angiotensinogen will be converted into angiotensin 1. So we can say that renin has proteolytic activity, it has some proteases activity, it has tendency to break down the proteins. Now this angiotensin 1 will be converted into angiotensin 2 with the help of an enzyme, angiotensin converting enzyme, and this enzyme is being released from the pulmonary capillaries or endothelial cells of the lungs. Okay, so lungs will release angiotensin converting enzyme, and this enzyme will convert angiotensin 1 into angiotensin 2 just by removing the 2 amino acid, terminal 2 amino acid. So just by removal of last 2 amino acid, angiotensin 1 will be converted into angiotensin 2 with the help of an enzyme, angiotensin converting enzyme, that is being released from the lungs. Now angiotensin 2 is basically active peptide, and it is going to perform its function that may play its role in the hypertension pathophysiology. The first role is angiotensin will be having its receptor throughout the body and on the smooth muscles of blood vessels as well. So angiotensin 2 will go and it will act on its receptor that are present on the smooth muscle of the blood vessel, and the name of these receptor is AT1 receptor. AT1. So it will act on these receptors and it will cause the vasoconstriction. It will cause vasoconstriction. So let me tell you an important thing. Blood pressure is equal to cardiac output multiplied by TPR. So if the blood vessel is constricted, obviously now blood has to face lots of resistance while moving through the blood vessel, because blood vessel has been constricted, the size of lumen has decreased, so it means its resistance has been increased. So it means TPR, total peripheral resistance, will increase, and when the total peripheral resistance will increase, ultimately blood pressure will increase, blood pressure will go high. Now there is another important point. Angiotensin 2 basically have two types of receptor. The one is basically AT1 receptor, another type of receptor is AT2 receptor that has vasodilatory effect. No need to confuse about it. Like it is having vasoconstrictory effect, it is also having vasodilatory effect. So net effect should be 0, but it does not happen like this. Basically, when we get adult, in our body, most of the on most of the tissue, 81 receptors are present. Predominantly, 81 receptors are present. In the fetus, 82 receptors were present initially when fetus was developing. So 82 receptor were present. So 82 receptor has also very important role in the development of fetus. But in an adult human being, mostly 81 receptor will be present. So vasoconstrictory effect will be dominant throughout the time. Well, it was the point number 1, that it will increase the TPR by causing vasoconstriction. There is another very important effect. Angiotensin 2 will be having 81 receptor on the adrenal cortex and adrenal medulla of the adrenal gland. You know that adrenal gland is basically present on the kidney, and this outer portion, the blue in color, is basically the adrenal cortex, and this inner red one is basically adrenal medulla. Adrenal cortex is responsible for the production of aldosterone, a steroid hormone, while red portion, the adrenal medulla, is basically responsible for the synthesis and release of catecholamines, epinephrine and norepinephrine. So angiotensin 2 will act on adrenal cortex as well as adrenal medulla, and it will increase the secretion of aldosterone as well as catecholamines, epinephrine and norepinephrine. And you know that when epinephrine and norepinephrine level will increase, obviously cardiac output, TPR, both will increase and blood pressure will go up. Now let's talk about the mechanism of aldosterone. How aldosterone is going to increase the blood pressure. Aldosterone is basically a steroid hormone. So it must be having receptor intracellular or intranuclear. Okay, because it has ability to penetrate into the cell. It is lipid in nature. It is steroid hormone. So it will not be difficult for aldosterone to cross the cell membrane of the cell, to cross the lipophilic cell membrane of the cell. So it will get into the cell. This is the reason aldosterone have intracellular receptor. When aldosterone will act on its intracellular receptor, this receptor aldosterone complex will get into the nucleus of the cell. Okay, now on which cell is basically acting on, let me tell you, aldosterone will act on the cells of distal convoluted tubules and collecting duct of nephron. Okay, so aldosterone will release in response to angiotensin 2, and it will go on the distal convoluted tubules and collecting duct cells. When it will go there, it will be having intracellular receptor. Now here I have zoomed in one cell. So obviously this nephron collecting duct will be made up of lots of cells that are very tightly joined with each other. I am just zooming out one cell so that exact mechanism can be explained. Okay, come back. Aldosterone and its receptor complex will get into the nucleus of the cell, and inside the nucleus, you know that DNA is present, and on the DNA, you know that some specific genes are present, and every gene is responsible for specific RNA, or that will ultimately lead to the production of specific protein. So now these genes will produce specific RNA. For the production of these RNA, some transcription factors are required that will enhance the expression of these genes, and activity of those transcription factor will be increased. Activity of those transcription factor will be increased by this aldosterone and its receptor complex. So it means this aldosterone is basically increasing the activity of transcription factor, and when the activity of transcription factor will increase, gene expression of some gene will increase, and when the gene expression of some gene will increase, it means transcription will increase and messenger RNAs from each gene will be formed. Then messenger RNA will come out of the nucleus with the help of nuclear pore, and it will bind on the ribosome. And when it will bind on the ribosome, process of translation will start. Process of translation mean now process of protein synthesis is going to start on the ribosome. So new proteins are being formed. So there are 3 specific new proteins which are going to produce, and they are, the most prominent is sodium potassium ATPase pump. This protein will be produced and it will be translocated on the basolateral side of the cell. You know that every cell has basically 2 sides. The one that is facing the lumen, that is facing the lumen of the nephron or lumen of the stomach or lumen of the esophagus, and that is facing toward the lumen will be called as apical side or luminal side, and the opposite side that is opposite toward the lumen will be called as basolateral side. So this is the basolateral side and this is the luminal or apical side. So when the transcription and translation process will happen and proteins will be produced, these proteins will be translocated onto the different sites. This sodium potassium ATPase pump will be translocated on the basolateral side, while some other proteins which include sodium channel, which include potassium channel, they will be translocated on the apical side, on the luminal side, Now what will happen? The function of this sodium potassium ATPase pump is a flux of 3 sodium, the movement of 3 sodium ion out of the cell and the movement of 2 potassium into the cell. So here you can see that sodium level will decrease, intracellular sodium level will decrease, while intracellular potassium level will increase, because potassium is coming into the cell, sodium is going out of the cell. So sodium level will decrease and potassium level will increase. Now look at these channels, sodium channel and potassium channel. Sodium channel is basically and both of these channels are basically responsible for simple diffusion transport. Simple diffusion is movement of ions, movement of substances from higher concentration to low concentration, and with the help of these proteins, these sodium ion and potassium ion will do simple diffusion, So now inside, sodium concentration is low, so obviously according to diffusion rule, sodium should come into the cell from higher concentration in the filtrate. You know, this is basically glomerular filtrates. From the filtrate, sodium ion should move into the cell because intracellular sodium is low, and in the filtrate sodium level should be high. So from high concentration to low concentration, sodium will get into the cell, and from after coming into the cell, it will again with the help of this sodium potassium ATPase pump, it will move toward the basolateral side into the blood circulation. While here you can see potassium level is high inside the cell. So according to the simple diffusion rule, potassium should move from higher concentration to low concentration. So potassium will move out of the cell. Okay. In this way, aldosterone is basically increasing the sodium reabsorption, sodium retention, and it is increasing the excretion of potassium. So this is the reason we can say that aldosterone basically cause the hypokalemia, and it increase the reabsorption of sodium and ultimately water as well. You know that where sodium will go, water will love to follow it. So aldosterone basically cause sodium, water, retention. So now it means sodium level and water level into the blood is getting high, or we can say the blood volume is increasing. So if the blood volume increases, in the previous video while explaining the Frank-Starling law, I have explained that when the blood volume increases and the diastolic volume will increase. When blood volume will increase and diastolic volume will increase, it means that more blood will go into the ventricle. When more blood will go into the ventricle, ventricles will expand more. When ventricles will expand more, obviously they will contract back with more force. With more force. Obviously, if you will expand one rubber band more, it will contract with more power. Similarly, when ventricle will expand more, they will contract back with more force. And when they will contract back with more force, obviously stroke volume will increase. That will ultimately increase the cardiac output. And we know that when cardiac output increases, blood pressure will increase. So this is the second function, that angiotensin 2 can increase the blood pressure by sodium water retention. Okay, and this concept of stroke volume and diastolic volume has been explained in the previous video while discussing the Frank-Starling law. Well, there is another function of angiotensin 2, and that is on the hypothalamus. Angiotensin 2 have also AT1 receptor, present on the hypothalamus. Okay, hypothalamus is basically synthesize a very important hormone that is called as antidiuretic hormone, or it is also called as vasopressin. But it does not release this vasopressin directly into the circulation. It synthesizes and then it releases this vasopressin into the pituitary gland, and then from the pituitary gland it will be released into the circulation. Now here you can see that hypothalamus is having AT1 receptor on its plasma membrane. When angiotensin 2 will go and it will bind on its receptor, it will increase or enhance the synthesis of this hormone vasopressin. And now it means the release from the pituitary will increase. Now it means angiotensin 2 is also increasing the release of vasopressin, synthesis and release of vasopressin. Now let's see what are the function of vasopressin. Here you can see vasopressin, which indicate like it should have activity like vasoconstriction. Yes, it causes vasoconstriction by acting on its receptor V1 that are present on the smooth muscles of arteries. When it will act on the smooth muscles, it will cause the constriction. And obviously when constriction will occur, TPR will increase and blood pressure will increase. There is another very important function that is performed on the collecting duct of the nephron. Vasopressin will be having receptor V2 on the surface of the cell, on the plasma membrane. Why not inside the cell? Because vasopressin is basically a peptide hormone, and peptide hormones are polar in nature. They will not be able to cross the cell membrane and get into the cell. If they will not be able to get into the cell, so obviously they should have receptor on the outer surface of the cell. So when this vasopressin will act on its V2 receptor that is present on the outer surface, and this V2 receptor is basically G protein coupled receptor. So intracellular signaling mechanism, after the activation of G protein, intracellular signaling mechanism will take place, and which result in activation of some transcription factor. And again, you know that transcription factor will increase the gene expression of certain protein. In this way, a messenger RNA will be formed. Then this messenger RNA will come out of the nucleus, and process of translation of protein synthesis will take place. But in this case, the protein that is going to form is aquaporin. And now this aquaporin will be placed on the basolateral side of the collecting duct, of the cells of the collecting duct, on the basolateral side. Aquaporin. While on the aquaporin will be placed on the apical side or luminal side. Apical side or luminal side, not on the basolateral side. On the basolateral side, always aquaporin proteins are present. On the basolateral side, here you can see always aquaporin proteins are present, while on the luminal or apical side, after transcription and translation, aquaporin protein will be formed and they will be translocated toward the basolateral side. Now what will happen, by using these aquaporin channels, these channels are basically responsible for the reabsorption of water. Now what will happen, the water will come out of these channel and it will get into the cell. So it means these aquaporin basically reabsorbing the water. They are increasing the reabsorption of water, and then they will, by using the aquaporin on the basolateral side, the water will get into the blood. Okay, so it will increase the blood volume. And I have explained just a minute before that when the blood volume will increase and diastolic volume will increase, and diastolic volume will result in expansion of ventricle, and when the ventricle will expand more, they will contract back with more power, and when they will contract back with more power, they will increase the stroke volume. And when the stroke volume will increase, ultimately cardiac output will increase and blood pressure will increase. Okay, so this is the reason activation of renin angiotensin 2 increases the blood pressure by lots of mechanisms. Overactivation of RAAS system can lead to the hypertension. Angiotensin 2 also has been reported to cause the ventricular hypertrophy, and it also has been reported to cause the blood vessels remodeling or blood vessel stiffness. So obviously, if there is more production of angiotensin 2, that can ultimately cause hypertrophy or vascular stiffness. This may result in the hypertension. Okay, and by blocking the renin enzyme, by blocking the angiotensin converting enzyme, by blocking the aldosterone receptor, by blocking these 81 receptor, we can treat the blood pressure, we can manage the blood pressure. Well, pharmacology of blood pressure pharmacology of blood pressure will be discussed at the end of this hypertension series. So please, I hope you must like the lecture. So don't forget to subscribe my channel and press the bell icon so that you may get notification for the future video. And also please like and share this video and comment if you want to ask any question. Thank you so much.